I worked in the mining industry in the late 60s when I was about 20. Before that I was bagging groceries at the local supermarket. Then, after being told about this mining job by a friend who was in it, I decided to take it because the pay was much better than my current job. I applied and got accepted to work at what was said to be the safest and best paying job a man could ask for at the time. But one thing that the big mining companies don't tell you is all of the risks involved. They tell you things like lung cancer is possible but highly unlikely, mines can collapse, but is super rare with our safety standards, etc. etc. What they don't tell you about is the shit that goes on behind the curtain of advertising. When I was hired, I moved to a small mining town in the middle of nowhere to carry on with my job. And after I settled in, I started at work. After I stated, I went through training where I learned the do's and don'ts of mining, how to properly dig out coal and other minerals if I encountered them. So after all of this, I was partnered up with a more experienced miner who had been down there for what he told me was 13 years. So I figured this guy knew what he was doing. Anyways, I was paired with him to shadow, learn some more specifics. He took me into the mine, showed me a day in the life, pointed out some cool things along the way, gave me a couple pointers. He seemed like a pretty great guy. He had a certain friendliness to him that was somewhat foreign to me. So after a week of shadowing, it was time for me to go off by myself, and I felt pretty ready. So we said our goodbyes since I wouldn't be seeing him again because that was his final week, and he was moving to go live with his girlfriend or something like that. But right before we parted ways, he told me he forgot to tell me the two most important things to remember. Don't drink the water, and don't mine the black and orange stone. There was a certain look in his eyes and his emotions that scared me. I had never seen it before, it just felt off. Before I could ask him more, I had to run to catch the elevator down to the mines, so I wasn't late. I never did hear from him again. I thought about those words carefully for the next few weeks, as I would stare at the water dripping from stalactites in the oldest parts of the mines, wondering, does it make you hallucinate, is it poisonous, or was the old guy just trying to scare me? I didn't know, and after a while didn't care. After about 2 years in the mines, I was fairly used to the routine. Get up at 4 a.m, get ready, go to work, clock in, work till noon, eat lunch, work till 6, go home, drink and fall asleep. This routine never changed. Didn't have enough money to create a new routine, or not enough to change it. Nothing ever changed. Now something I didn't explain was that while you were down there you were assigned a group. Groups consisted of 5 people if no one was out sick. But on some days it could be just you if all of the others were out. But the company that employed us didn't care about our safety, as long as it was just enough to pass the law. So on days where we only had 2 or 3 people, we would all mine right next to each other, and when one person found something, the others would leave one alone to mine it up, while we look for new resources. So on a day where we only had 3, we did just that. One person found a small pocket of coal and started going at it, and then another found another small chunk of coal in the wall. This left just me mining on my own. I went off to another area by myself to mine just within earshot of each other. I went to work in this large open area which seemed to be relatively untouched. It was quite beautiful actually. A small stream of water flowed through it, and stalactite and stalagmites decorated the room. So I was going about my usual business, picking out a good spot to mine, and when I started I noticed that the stone that I was chipping away at was somewhat loose. Wasn't very hard to break apart. Now this wasn't an uncommon thing, so I went about it normally. But then as I got further and further into the wall chipping away with my pickaxe, it got softer and softer, until it was soft as packed dirt. And then the strangest things started to happen. It stated to give of light. The stone was illuminated, very faintly, but I could see it. Then as I chipped away it got brighter and brighter until there was a black rock glowing orange. Now when I say black I mean really black. It was a strange shade of black, that almost seemed blacker than pure black itself. Like I was looking into an endless void. Now for the orange was the brightest shade of orange I had ever seen. It illuminated only some parts of the rock. Except every moment I looked at it the darker it seemed to get. I had to figure out what this was. I needed to show the boss. So without any remembrance of the words my mentor had told me, I pulled my pickaxe back with all of my strength, and in one hit the rock disintegrated into dust. Just like that. But at the exact same time I heard what sounded like 100 tons of dynamite behind me, and when I looked back, the entrance to the room was caved in. After the mine collapsed there was yelling, some for me, some for others. I wasn't sure what exactly had happened, but I did know that there had to be a link to the orange stuff. Actually that term is quite boring. We just referred to it as Minerlex. Yes, I know, quite a common sounding alienish name, or whatever you want to call it, but that's what we called it. So anyways, I knew it had to be linked. I investigated while I waited for them to dig me out. I knew they would. I walked back over to the now disintegrated Minerlex, and began to investigate. It was just a small orange pile of dust now, still glowing, but there was nothing left to draw a valid conclusion as to if it caused the explosion. So I just settled in, and waited for my knight in shining armor to come. The first hour was fairly okay. I passed the time by taking in my surroundings. Watching water drip from the stalactites, looking at patterns in the walls. This happened only an hour into the workday, so I wasn't that hungry, and I had my water on me, so I wasn't very thirsty. I knew they were coming for me, so I wasn't that worried. Around the third hour is when what happened started to sink in. I started thinking, really thinking. I played out the scenario over and over in my mind. I picked up my pickaxe, pulled it behind me, struck the stone broke, and about 2 seconds later the mine caved in. Over and over and over I played this until I could recite it like a play that I had practiced for months. Hour 5-ish is when I started to get hungry. I still had a fair amount of water left. I had a 50 ounces bottle, and I had about half left. But I was so hungry. I had food in my bag but not much, so I saved it. The hunger, it was bearable, but it was there. About 6 hours had passed and I couldn't take it anymore. I had to eat, I needed to eat. So I ate both of my protein bars, and had what must have been 20 ounces of water to flush them down. I was now without food and I still couldn't hear my peers coming. 10 hours and I ran out of water, so much for rationing. But it was okay. I knew they would be here to save me soon. Only an hour later, not only was I super thirsty, but I was very hungry and famished. I didn't know what to do. I had to fill up somehow. And then I thought back to that stupid old man's words, "Don't drink the water." I knew I couldn't, but it was so tempting. There was a constant sound of it rushing through the cave that taunted me. I couldn't bear it, but I knew I had to. What must have been 6 hours later, I had just woken up from what little sleep I tried to achieve. It was hard to fall asleep while that state. But when I woke up I had the driest mouth ever. I couldn't produce saliva or anything, and my stomach must have been shrinking from the emptiness. So I had to do it. I had to drink the water. As I slowly approached the stream running through the cave, I thought, what would happen? Would I become ill and die? Would I go crazy? Would I become possessed and kill my friends? That was though I had for a second, but I knew it couldn't be true. So without looking back I filled my bottle with the water and I drank it. Nothing happened except my thirst wasn't as bad. That fucking man was lying to me. Are you kidding me? That piece of shit. How could he do this to me? The mineral X was probably just some weird form of copper or something, and the water was complete bullshit. So I had some more. A lot more. I had so much that my stomach began to hurt. So then, happy with the water, I fell back asleep. I was then woken from my sleep by a loud constant banging sound, and then the brightest light imaginable buzzed through the wall where the cave had collapsed. And then more shuddered in until my eyes became used to it, and then 2 men came in and asked me if I was okay. Gave me water and food, and got me out of there. I took a week of leave before I went back to the mine, and was given a raise, so I didn't sue the fuck out of that damn company. Things were pretty normal after that. But something felt off. All of the time I sensed something. I was finally put back to work, and everything was pretty normal. 2 was doing a normal job going about my business, when all of a sudden, I heard something. I turned around to find water dripping in the ceiling. Was it there before? Probably just paranoia. Nothing, most likely. I went back to work, and then the same sound grew louder. I turned back, and a small stream emerged from a different point in the wall. What the fuck was going on? I went to investigate when at the end of the tunnel I saw the reflection of my light bouncing of a large flat surface on the floor. As I looked closer I realized what it was. Water. The mine was flooding. I booked it out of there, and then I was met with a 2-way intersection. One to my group and the other to who knows where. And on cue, like something was trying to block my way, a wall of water came rushing down the tunnel from where my group was, so I booked it the other way out of there. I kept getting met with more and more intersections, and the same scenario occurring over and over. Sometimes it was a cave going down was already completely flooded, sometimes it was a wave rushing down one. Until finally, I was met with 2 choices. Neither had water, they seemed fairly normal. I booked it to the one going up, and luckily enough it was the way out. I was in the main room, where the elevator shaft was. I was screaming to others that we needed to go, we needed to get out. And as I got on, everyone stared at me confused. I told them that the caves were flooding, and when I said those 4 words they all booked it to the elevator and we rode it out of there. We waited for hours for more to come out or for water to seep out the top. They finally sent people down there after neither of these possibilities occurred, and when they came back up they told us that the caves were not flooded, but that all of the walls were soaked. But how was that possible? How did the caves flood and then empty? After investigation we figured out that the water had come through holes in the wall that I saw appear that were not there before the incident. But the strange thing, what was never identified, was those lost in the accident's bodies, or anywhere the water could have drained from the cave. Edit. Wow, thank you all for your nice comments. Would you rather me post a different story, or would you like me to tell you another